Good morning. Technical difficulties in my headset, but that's okay. What up, what up? Welcome, everybody. This is the Claims Recruiter Office Hours podcast live stream. Welcome. Good morning. Happy Tuesday. Happy Tuesday. Got my coffee. We're hanging out. We got some smooth jazz in the background. If you're here today, say hello, say what up. I'd love to hear from you in the comments. We are rocking and rolling. Good morning, good afternoon if you're on the West Coast, or on the East Coast, excuse me. We'll apologize today. I'm a little sick. We're listening to some smooth jazz today. Little feeling under the weather, but that's okay. That's what happens when you get 10 dudes going on a ski trip in an Airbnb for a week. You come back with a little sickness sometimes, so. If you're joining us today, if you're joining me today, welcome. This is the Claims Recruiter Office Hours podcast live stream. We go live every Tuesday with the goal to help 100 people get jobs and claims in the year 2026. So if you're here hanging out, if you have questions, you can drop them in the chat. You can also scan this QR code right here on the other side this week. Ooh, we'll change up. That'll put you over to the website, crewtalentgroup.com/office hours. The link is also in the comments over there. And you can ask questions and we can chat about whatever you want. So if you got questions about advancing in your career, jobs and insurance, resume, interview tips, whatever you have, you can submit them there. I've got some questions prepared today for the show that came in through the week, that came in through my DMs, that people ask me when they call me, whatever. But chances are is if you've got a question about insurance, advancing in your career, whatever it might be, someone else out there in the world's got the same question as you. So that's what we're here to do. That's the focus of this live stream. Welcome. Thanks for joining. Let's get right after it. I got my hurricane season 2020 mug here today, drinking some coffee. Cool. Cool. One thing and we will get started. We are live on Facebook, LinkedIn, and YouTube. So if you're joining us, say hello. I'd love to hear from you. That's what we're here for. This is Claims Recruiter Office Hours, where I open up my office every Tuesday for 1 hour, and we just kind of hang out and do whatever the wonderful people in the audience, the viewers, want. So, without further ado, first up today, we've got the old market pulse. The pulse, the heartbeat of the market. So I just want to give kind of an update of what I'm seeing in the market. If you're watching, listening, if you're out there, I'd love to hear what you're seeing in the market right now, in the market in terms of jobs in the claims industry, what we're seeing in terms of work, what we're seeing in terms of trends, all that good stuff. So I will give kind of my update, things that I'm seeing, what I'm hearing from hiring managers, what I'm hearing from candidates. If you're out there tuning in, I'd love to see or hear from you too, what you're hearing about the industry, what you're hearing about jobs and things like that. Yeah, but what I'm hearing right now in terms of market pulse, industry news, updates, first off is it's starting to get a little bit busier. I don't know, we're seeing some of this weather activity happening. I think Texas had some potential hail last night. I know we saw some windstorms, some tornadoes up there in Michigan. I know Oklahoma had some stuff. I know Tennessee's had some severe weather, and so we're starting to see kind of this early spring Hey, Brandon, thanks for joining. Appreciate the support. Hope you're doing well. Good to hear from you. Yeah, be super curious to hear what you're hearing too, Brandon. But yeah, what I'm hearing right now is, one, I'm starting to see some of this property work kind of cycling back. It seems like we're having kind of an early spring. Oh man, I saw online yesterday the Vail earnings report came out. They said that this is the snow in the Rockies and Utah was 40% lower than their lowest recorded season. So really weird weather trends are happening already in 2026. I know out here on the West Coast, specifically the Pacific Northwest, we have just atrocious snow totals, and that's going to mean some really interesting, not good summer weather, likely fire season. A little bit worried, a little bit concerned. Yeah, so that's what I'm starting to see is some of these, like, if you're a property adjuster out there and you're begging for work or itching to get out there, we're starting to see kind of the things turn over, which we typically do this time of year anyways. So that's one thing I'm starting to see. Another thing that I'm seeing kind of across markets is the return to office is real. We're starting to see hybrid roles. We're starting to see more in-office roles. We're starting to see less remote work. And one thing I'll specifically say that I'm seeing about this is the earlier you're in the career, or kind of like the more entry-level positions are more in office, and in terms of like more specialized or kind of the nuanced roles, we're seeing those more being open to remote, right? And so a lot of property adjusters are out there looking for work right now. That's no secret. That's something we've been talking about on this show for a long time. And so a lot of those roles, unfortunately, are moving back into the office, and because carriers can be more selective, TPAs can be more selective. They can bring people in. They've got the office space. They want that control or whatever it might be. Frankly, I think it's when you're first learning or learning a new role, I do think there's a benefit to being inside of an office, and so we're seeing that. If they're needing someone with 15 years construction defect experience, it's a little bit harder to find that, and that's when some of these TPAs and carriers are saying, okay, we'll take someone remote. We can work with this. And so that's another kind of trend in the industry that I'm seeing, is some of these like more niche type roles. People are saying, okay, we'll go remote. And then you're seeing some of these companies like Chubb or Munich Re, where they're moving their people in office, where those people are then kind of interested in moving to go to a remote role. And so it's kind of that between where people want the remote, especially if they have that opportunity, and sometimes they'll take a little bit less money to do it. So if you're an insurance company, if you're a TPA, if you're a carrier out there hiring people, it's a really good way to kind of, if you're having trouble hiring people, if you're having trouble finding the skill sets that you need, being open to remote work is one way to kind of find some of those skill sets without breaking the bank. Because obviously that's one way you can do it, is you can pay people whatever and get them to move. But being the person that offers remote when everybody else is moving in office is a differentiator for you. Third kind of market pulse thing that I'm seeing, the last thing I'll say on this kind of segment, and again, I'm interested in hearing from the listeners, people watching the live stream, people out there, interested in hearing from you too. But the third thing that I'm seeing, again, and I've talked about this on this show, on this live stream the last few weeks, is I'm seeing less property roles and more commercial auto, general liability. Some of these kind of niche GL, complex GL type roles are increasingly difficult to find. People and companies that I'm talking to are really struggling. And if you go on Indeed, if you go on these job boards out there, and you see, if you just go out there and search, adjuster jobs in Dallas, you're not going to see a long laundry list of property jobs. I know they're out there, like Geico's opening up an office. If you're a property adjuster in Dallas looking for work, go to Geico. They're hiring. But what you'll find is a lot of specialized niche roles, and the unfortunate part about this, especially if you're trying to kind of move up in your career, is they're requiring lots of years of experience. They want people with a solid background that can jump into these roles and work right away. You know, so they're wanting you with 10 years of construction defect experience. They're wanting you with, you know, 10 years of GL experience, high exposure litigated claims, you know, that type of thing. And there's reasons for that. And I think the biggest one is it's difficult to put someone on a highly litigated desk and without a lot of experience, right? If you're handling claims that have super big exposures and are going to court, you know, they want someone who really knows their stuff, who can go into a courtroom, who can go into a deposition, have experience, understand what they're talking about, not say the wrong thing. And a training class is tough to teach those skills, but you know, 15 years of experience is how you learn that. But how do you get those 15 years of experience? And so those are the things that we talk about on this show, on this live stream. How do we get there? And so that's what we're here about. But that's kind of what I'm seeing. Those are kind of the three trends I'm seeing in the market. Is one, property, I guess the weather, the storms that produce the property claims. We're starting to kind of see the springtime storms coming in. We're seeing this return to office type mentality, but we're seeing people who are winning in these in kind of these staffing battles, so to say, are the teams that are willing to kind of open up things remote, maybe figure out some unique ways to train people and to upskill people. And then the third is complex GL, commercial auto, cyber, construction defects, some of these specialized lines, these niche lines of insurance. Those are the adjusters that are the most marketable right now, that are finding work, the positions that are in the most need right now. So that's the little pulse on the market for this week. Move on. Doing this kind of new thing where every Monday I've been posting on my LinkedIn and also in a couple forums online, just an open-ended question about whatever I'm thinking about this week, and then I talk about it on this show. So my question for this week, and I'll put it on the screen here, and if you're watching, if you're listening, if you're tuning in, I'd love to hear your response to this. But what is one survival skill that you use in your day-to-day that you didn't learn in training? That's my question of the week. Sponsored by Crew Talent Group, the best insurance recruiting, claims adjusting recruiting company on planet Earth. Shout out Crew Talent Group. That's me. So if you're watching, if you're tuning in, if you're listening, thanks so much for joining. Appreciate you being here. Love to hear your response to the question of the week. What is one survival skill that in your day-to-day that you didn't learn in training? I've got some responses that I've seen. I'll kind of talk about them. I'm going to start off with my response. One survival skill that I did not learn in recruiter school, in claims recruiter school, which I didn't attend, by the way. Got a degree in Parks and Rec. Shout out Leslie Nope. I just learned this on my own, right? We figured it out. But been doing it for 10 years, so I've had some awesome teachers along the way. So I did kind of go to school, right? But one survival skill that I've used in my day-to-day, and I put this on my LinkedIn, is it took me a minute to learn this, but at first when I was recruiting, you know, you talk to hiring managers, tell me about the role, tell me about the position, tell me about what it's worked, and you hear all these amazing things. The desk is great, it's an awesome environment, sweet coworkers, amazing team, great software, everything's great. They show up to the first day, they get dumped a pending count of 60 claims, haven't been touched in months, angry insureds, all their KPIs are whack, they're 1099s, they're not getting paid for 2 months, all this crazy stuff, right? And so one of the things that I've learned kind of in my survival skill as a recruiter is it's really, really, really important to dig deep and to learn about what's good about the role, but also to learn what maybe is challenging in the role and communicate that effectively to candidates that I'm working with. And the reason is not to kind of crap on the place that I'm working with. Obviously, as I'm partnering with companies, I want to work with amazing companies, but no role is perfect. There's going to be challenges in everything. And if you can communicate like, hey, you know, the software we're using isn't great. We're looking to maybe move softwares in a year or two, but it's kind of a hurdle right now. You communicate that type of thing to a candidate early on and they understand what they're coming into. They see it more as a challenge they can overcome than as opposed to if you say everything's amazing and they show up to their first day and it's like, holy smokes. I worked with this company once And I was working for an IA firm, staffing desk adjusters for a client, and basically they would work the entire claim file in the IA firm software. And then after the entire claim was completed, they would have to transfer everything manually, note by note, every single document, every single note by hand into the client software, basically doubling the work on every single claim that they did ever. And I didn't know that coming into it, and they didn't tell me that. And then I would get all this negative feedback. People literally walked off the job because of it. And it's a good example. It's like, once I learned that and I could effectively communicate that to people walking into that desk, they knew what to expect. And so they didn't get as mad. They didn't walk off the job. They didn't get angry. And was it a great thing? No, it wasn't fun. But when I was able to effectively communicate that to people kind of coming into the role, it made it just a way smoother transition for the people working that job. And so that's one survival skill that I use in my day-to-day that I didn't learn in recruiter school. Curious to hear your thoughts. If you're watching the show, if you're joining, if you're tuning in, what is one survival skill that you use in your day-to-day that you didn't learn in training? Pop it in the chat. Love to hear from you. We're going to go to Facebook. That's where I posted this. Got a lot of response. Got a lot of interaction. Let's see what people had to say in response to this question. The number one response to this that I received on Facebook. Not what you think. What is one survival skill you use in your day-to-day that you didn't learn in training? I would imagine this came from field adjusters, and you'll kind of see why in a second. Number one survival skill, finding places to use the bathroom while in the field is the number one survival skill, according to Facebook. Jason said, finding places to use the bathroom, always use it when you get the chance. Someone chimed in and said, hotel lobbies are my go-to. Free breakfast, too, if you're early enough. Hey, that's a great survival skill. You're only going to learn that here on the Claims Recruiter Office Hours podcast. They don't talk about that on the other shows. Let's see. That was the number one. Let's see. Carrying a pee bottle in my truck. I sincerely hope that not everybody needs to do that, but it was a response that I got. I can see why they wouldn't teach you that in training. I sincerely hope you don't have to do that. It was International Women's Day on Sunday. Shout out to all the adjuster ladies. I think that's much tougher for the adjuster ladies out there. Again, hope you don't actually have to do that. Sounds like it's an issue, but maybe just we'll go back to comment one, finding places to use the restroom. Always use it when you get the chance. Something you're not going to learn in training, but you're going to learn here on the Claims Recruiter Office Hours show. What other responses do we get? Time management, organization, note-taking, negotiations, learning to type. Learning to type is a huge skill that you can learn. You can learn how to do that is so important in this industry. Especially if you're a desk adjuster, if you're coming into the industry, go online. There's free typing classes you can take. You can up your words per minute. But one of the biggest skills that you can develop as an adjuster, if you're brand new and you're just sitting at home waiting for your first opportunity, is learning how to be on a phone call and multitask and type notes at the same time. Is such an important skill to have, something that you can learn how to do, and it will make your job so much easier when you do land that first job. So I hear this constantly from people that are working in the field, that it's a great skill to have, from managers that have people that struggle with it. And so if you're sitting at home, looking for work, trying to develop your skills, that's something that you can work on. Learning to type fast and accurately, and also multitask. So do it while you're on the phone. I do it as a recruiter all the time. Now, granted, now it's a little bit easier. I've got like a AI agent that can join my meetings and they can take notes for me, so that's pretty sweet. And I imagine that desk adjusters kind of use that tool as well. Being able to type fast and effectively, accurately while on the phone with an insured, great skill to have. Travel planning, budget management, as well as taxes and tax structures such as corporations and LLC, being mechanically inclined. Mike says, stop arguing with roofers, contractors, and salesmen. Yeah, I don't know of anyone who has a good time arguing with roofers and contractors. You don't have to argue with them. Hey, you probably do sometimes, right? If you're a desk adjuster and you're trying to agree upon a scope, you do probably have to negotiate a little bit, but it comes to a point, right? Let's see what else. Don't forget your laptop charger. That is one survival skill that's important across many industries. Don't forget that laptop charger. I like how they use the USB-Cs now on the laptops. Makes it a lot easier. Everything in training don't give you the tools to be an adjuster. You learn by trial and error. I hope you learn a little bit in training. Let's see what else. That's the question of the week. What is one survival skill that you use in your day-to-day? If you're joining in, I'd love to hear from you as well. Some survival skills that you've learned. Let's go over here. Don't leave bad news on a voicemail. If it was worth making the phone call, it's worth waiting for a call back. That is a fantastic response to this question. And, you know, the unfortunate truth is, the job as an insurance adjuster, you will occasionally be leaving or telling people bad news, and I agree with this sentiment 100%. Same thing for me as a recruiter. If I'm talking to someone, if I've gone through 3 rounds of an interview and I gotta say, hey, you know, you didn't get the job, it's good to have that voice-to-voice connection and not leave it on a text message or a voicemail. I would imagine that's great advice for claims adjusters out there too. If you got bad news, they're probably gonna have questions. They're probably gonna be upset. I know it's not the funnest part of the job, but don't leave bad news on a voicemail. Seth says, don't take claims personally. I think that's pretty good advice. Mary, shout out Mary, Rossi Training Academy. Take care of your temple. Our jobs are tough at times, very emotional, especially with catastrophic cases. Over the years, it builds up. We need to rest and recharge. This helps with better communication with insureds and claimants. For me, meditation and physical activity outdoors. 100%. Take care of yourself out there. It's important, especially if you're a cat adjuster on the road, working long hours, late nights. Take care of yourself. Take care. You know, you can only help people if you're in a good state of mind yourself. And so it's super important to take care of yourself. Drink water. 4 of these a day. Drink it. Water is so important. Exercise. Keep moving. Walk 30 minutes a day. That's the easiest you can do. Try and move your body for 30 minutes a day. You're sitting behind a desk for 12 hours a day. Get up. Take some walks. Take some breaks. It's important. Whew. Well, here we are. Claims recruiter office hours, 20 minutes in, hanging out. Love to hear from you if you are joining us this week on the live stream. Every week on Tuesday at 11 a.m. Central Standard Time, 9 a.m. on the West Coast, I open up my office and we just kind of hang out here and answer questions, chat with who's ever hanging out, and talk all things careers and in claims. So if you got a question, if you have an interview coming up, if you got a resume you want me to review, love to hear from you. The wife says, ergonomics in healthcare. We get some training in school, but not a ton. Lots of hospital systems provided on the job, though. Ergonomics, right? It's the same thing with adjusters. Grace works in healthcare. She's my wife. She's sick. I've got her sick. I'm sorry, Grace. She's out sick today. Watching the live stream downstairs. But yeah, no, super good call out there. I mean, adjusters are out there lifting ladders, picking up things, you know, have their equipment and bags, things like that. Ergonomics is so important. Longevity of careers is so important. You know, you can only work the claims if you can carry the ladder up to the roof. You can go climb the roof, things like that, especially if you're in the field. And so taking care of your body is so important in this field. if you're not following Michael Lombard on socials, Lombard Trucking, he's an awesome follow, but he's kind of more in the trucking industry, talks about fitness for truckers. Awesome, inspirational dude. You should check him out here on LinkedIn or on all socials. But he talks about this type of stuff. Moving your body is just so important on a daily basis. Staying active, making sure that you can do this job tomorrow and the next day and the next year and the next year. So I could talk about fitness, all that stuff for hours. So important. Cool. We'll keep moving on here. You're just tuning in. This is the Claims Recruiter office hours, where I open up my office every Tuesday for an hour and we hang out and chat about whatever we want to chat about. So if you got questions, you can drop them in the chat. You can also ask questions by scanning this QR code or heading over to my website, crewtalentgroup.com/office hours. Pop in questions that way too, and we talk about it. Let's see. So I've got some questions that came in throughout the week, and we will start rocking. Here's one question, and I seem to get this variation of this question over and over kind of in my DMs or when I'm talking to people, so I love to talk about this. Got 20 years of construction experience, 12 years of commercial property cat experience. What would you suggest to do to pivot into construction defect? Not sure if there are any specific certifications for that. So yeah, I mean, this is a tough question. It's a hard question because there's not just an easy answer, and I feel this pain, and so part of the reason I get this question so much is because you go online, you see these jobs, and you see people posting about it. Oh, we're looking for these adjusters, and there's people maybe in the property space looking for work that don't quite qualify. Well, how do you get that? It's the catch-22 of the industry. Everybody wants experience. How do you get the experience, right? So for this particular scenario, I think you've got an excellent background, 20 years of construction building experience. You've got the product ID, you understand construction. The tough part here is understanding the policy. And that's one of the biggest changes, I guess, from going from like a property type role into a more liability role, is especially like a field adjuster, a property adjuster. A lot of what you're focusing on is the products themselves, right? How do I get this roof back into the proper condition? And you go from the shingle roof, and then you commercial, a little different product ID, right? You've got flat roofs, you got TPO roofs, you got different type of roofing materials, and so a lot of the focus is on the actual materials, the actual reconstruction costs, things like that, and to move kind of towards some of the more complex general liability stuff. The focus is less on the product. You don't necessarily have to be as an expert on the product because you're going to hire professionals to do that for you. The more the focus then becomes on the actual policy, and that's where the complications come in. That's where things get more complicated, and really being able to dissect these complex policies is what's super important. And so that's kind of that jump, is like going from being a product expert to being a policy expert. And so that's what I would really focus on if you're trying to make that jump. Is you may already have these skills, you just need to be better at articulating these in the interview, in the application process, maybe the way that your resume looks and things like that. And so I would really try and focus your resume to talk about where you've been able to become a policy expert, give situations and examples where you found exclusions or inclusions in the policy, where you've been able to help find some of these things and save carriers money, or avoid litigation, or to make negotiations and things like that within that policy. So I would try and focus your skills on your resume more towards like the actual policy interpretation, and not to say that the product ID isn't important, but that's kind of that jump. And so that's one thing I would recommend. The other thing that I see a lot of times, especially with independent adjusters, is they go on their resume and they list off you know, every single deployment that they've ever done, and try not to look at it more like that. I would recommend, if you're an independent adjuster switching to the staff space or trying to get some of these like niche roles, is list your independent experience as like one bullet point or one job on your roster, or on, sorry, I can't talk, one job on your resume. And so instead of saying I worked this, you know, 3-month assignment, I worked this 3-month storm, I worked this 3-month storm, you worked as an independent adjuster for 10 years. And then within there, you can kind of list your notable assignments. You can list some of your more notable claims. You can talk about them within those bullet points, but don't list it as like assignment. It's one big bullet point, and you can kind of go into some of the more notable things. But stay away from listing every single assignment as its own, because it looks like you're a job hopper. It looks like you haven't, you know, even though, you know, when I look at that, I understand it, and I think most recruiters do. But maybe when a carrier manager who's skimming through resumes sees that, they might throw it in the no pile. So something else to think of. Certifications. There is a certification. You know, I don't see a lot of them. Really, what I'll say is some of these more advanced, you know, commercial auto, construction defect. I don't know if they're like, I found this construction risk and insurance specialist certification. I think that'd be a great thing to do. I'm sure it's really good education if it's something new. Really good, you know, educational material out there. But really what I would say is like your advanced industry designations are going to be what people are looking for. So start working on that AIC. Start working on your associate in risk management. Start working on your CPCU. Those are the designations that carriers and TPAs are going to want to see for these types of roles. And I know they're expensive. I know they're time consuming and they take a long time, and that's why they're desirable. It's a really good education plan. It's on my goals actually in 2026 to start my AIC, really just for the educational aspect of it. It's not going to necessarily advance my career like monetarily, but it's going to be great for my education. And so something I've been thinking about, maybe I'll make some content around it too, just like what it's like. But that's what I would say in terms of certifications is carriers are definitely looking for those. They definitely see these. Don jumping in the chat. Good point. Retool the resume, highlighting skills, finding the workmanship of material building, assessments, potential liability. This can be challenging if CAT experience is the only background. Also possibly focus on the depth of construction knowledge. Tie the skills of how vast your experience may be to contribute to defects regarding foundations, commercial roofs, windows, stucco, etc. Yeah. The got like a robot that filters out the software, like filters out bad words, and so it says assessments, you know, whatever. So it kind of looks weird on the screen, but yeah, no, I think that's a good point. Is you got to look at what they're looking for, and your kind of cheat sheet there is like the actual job description itself will sometimes kind of talk about what they're looking for. And yeah, looking at potential liability, looking at liability issues is a big part of it. Yeah, it is important to have the construction background too, especially. And a lot of times, again, with these more complicated claims, you're going to hire out engineers, you're going to hire out experts. And so sometimes the focus for these roles is more on the policy, more on the liability side, and less on the actual construction materials, because you're going to hire experts. And so something to think about. But yeah, totally great point from John in the comments. Thanks for joining. That's one of the biggest things I see from, if you're a property adjuster looking to go into the commercial space, you know, a lot of people I see, you know, I think that the progression for a property adjuster is to start with hail. You know, you learn how to do the roofing materials really well. You do the hail claims because they're repeatable. You learn those. Then you maybe move on to some of the interior claims, the water losses, the fire losses, and then you might get some exposure to commercial claims, and that can be a big jump for people. And so learning the different types of roofing materials, you know, learning how a TPO roof, obviously much different than a shingle roof, and so learning some of those differentiators. HAG roofing certifications, a place you can go to kind of learn some of that. Brandon says networking, go out, seek people doing the job you want to move into, ask for their time and start learning from them, build that trust. Most people are willing to mentor and help. That may open doors and opportunities on the road. Couldn't agree with this more. I mean, I've met a ton of really amazing people out there in the industry. I think a lot of people are super open to helping out new people. I think a lot of adjusters who've been doing this a long time want to talk about their experience and want to kind of help the future generation. And so if you're trying to learn, go out and find some people, especially if you're a brand new adjuster trying to be an independent. Go out and find a daily adjuster in your area and ask them to shadow. Help them write estimates for free for a month when you're not working. You know, it's a really good place to learn, to help people out, but also to network. And then what happens is that person gets slammed, and their IA firm's trying to send them claims, and they're saying no, send them to you instead because you're not busy. And so it's a really good place to network. Local claims organizations are a really good place to meet people online. LinkedIn's another great place. Rise is another great place to meet industry professionals, especially in your area that you can network in. So networking is the best place to find a job. I'll die on that hill all day. You know, Indeed, these job boards, dead, stink, terrible. Local in-person networking is the best. And network with people even if they're not the job title you want. Maybe they're the business development person for that company. They're going to know all the secrets. They're going to know all the people. They're going to know who to connect you with. So vendors know everything. I'll tell you this, like the restoration companies at these events, you know, I don't really work with the restoration folks a whole lot, but I love getting to know them because they always know who's hiring. They always know what companies need adjusters. They always know the industry secrets because they're all these events. So even if it's not necessarily someone with a job title that you're specifically looking for, network with people, learn their names, learn about their dog, get to know them, build relationships. Good things will come, 100%. Good stuff. Thanks for joining, everybody. Appreciate the comments here today. Keep moving on. Kind of talked about this one already. I've been working independent cat deployments for years. Work has dried up. I've been hearing that a lot. It's gonna come back. Is it gonna come back as full force it's been in the previous years? Probably not, right? We know that these things have changed. It's easier now to work in claims than it ever has been, and so we're not going to see the Hurricane Harvey fee schedules again. But you can work twice as many claims just as fast now as you maybe used to in 2017. So, you know, things are changing. But I've been applying for desk jobs, trying to survive. Carriers keep rejecting me as a flight risk. How do I get hired? Again, the biggest thing I see here is people will list out every single deployment they've ever done on their resume, and that just kind of makes you look like a flight risk, even if you're not. And I know, again, like when I'm looking at your resume, I understand, but that doesn't mean everybody will. So you want to put your independent experience as one bullet point on you, especially if you're going for staff jobs, as one bullet or one section on your resume. Independent adjuster, you know, you can put your company name there or whatever, and then talk about your assignments or talk about your notable assignments in there, but don't list them all as like individual jobs on your resume. And then the other thing for this particular situation is you want to address it immediately. Like if you get a call, if you're networking with people, you want to just be upfront about it. Like, hey, I've been an independent for years. I'm looking to transition. Just address that. You don't want to wait for them to ask you the question. Just address it right away. And you can also address it on your resume and your professional summary right at the top. Talk about it. Like, I've been independent for years, looking to transition into a staff role. And so you're addressing that right away. But yeah, I would definitely not wait for them to ask you that question. That question is definitely going to come. So just address it right away. Let's see what else we got. Just passed my adjuster exam. Absolutely zero claims experience. How hard is it to land that first job right now? And which carriers are actually willing to hire and train rookies? What's up, Chazity? Thanks for tuning in. Good to hear from you. Thanks for the info. Thank you for hanging out. I'm hearing this a lot right now. People brand new to the industry, looking to get into the industry, and it's tough right now. What I would say, how hard is it to land that first job right now? It depends on what you're looking for. It depends on what your background is. If you've got and some of those things. Just go back to the last one. I'm on a delay, right? So I get these comments like, I say it and then it goes 3 minutes later. But let's see, John. So this is for the last question. Unfortunately, this is very common, as most of my carrier is on the corporate carrier side. Managers are reluctant to hire IAs to staff. You really have to be honest and sell yourself on what you want for your future. 100%. Another thing you can do is try and work with some of the companies that you have experience with, right? If you went on an assignment with, a carrier in Florida, and you worked a hurricane for 2 years, back in 2018, go solicit that same carrier, because they have a familiarity with you. They probably have you in their system. They probably have seen your name before, and know your work product. And so that's another entry point that I've seen a lot of people go from IA to staff, is they go, if they worked a desk assignment with a specific carrier, and then they'll go work for that carrier staff in the future. And so that's another pipeline that I see all the time. Or another thing, and again goes back to what we were kind of talking about earlier in terms of networking, is try and make relationships with the people that you're working with on every claim, right? If you're a field adjuster, you're working with a desk adjuster, probably either from an IA firm or from a carrier directly. Make a relationship with that person while you're working that claim. Try and build those relationships. Try and get to know your desk adjusters, and maybe 2 years down the line they get promoted to a manager at a different company, and they're hiring, and there's an entry for you. And so it goes back to networking. I've seen that all the time too, and I think sometimes companies are a little bit weird about you, like calling up the desk adjuster. They want all the communication to come from them. But I think you want to partner with companies that want that collaboration. Don't just call them every time you have a little question. Try and figure things out on your own. But you want to build that relationship. Your job is to make them look good, right? Your job is to help them close the file. You're out in the field doing the inspection. They're the ones that owns the file. So your job is out there to make them look good. So if you do an awesome job, make them look good, they're going to remember you. They're going to want to build a relationship with you. They're going to want to send you more claims, even if it's to that firm. They want you to handle them because they know you're doing a good job. And it can help you get more claims in the short term. In the long term, it can help your job prospects. And so I see that all the time. I've seen it on the IA side where, I've got a guy in Denver that just kills it, and he's got a desk adjuster from a company that loves him, sends all the claims to that company just because he knows that adjuster's going to handle it. Well, guess what? That guy just got hired at a different company in a manager role. And now he's getting claims from that old company and the new company, right? And could probably get hired at either of those companies in a heartbeat. So that networking aspect is so important, and you can do that when you're receiving claims, especially as an IA. And so build those relationships when you're working as an IA. If you're working as a desk adjuster, learn the names of your teammates, get to know the people you're working with. It's going to open up your possibilities. Maybe they get a call for the next assignment and you don't. They're going to say, hey, I know this other person that you should also hire too. One of the things that I've found as a recruiter is the good people, especially on the desk side, and the field side, they go in pods. You find one really good desk adjuster, chances are they know 3-4 other people, and you get one of them, you get all 4, and it makes my job easy. But it's that networking aspect is so important, and you should always be networking, even when you don't need to. Great stuff. Okay, back to this one. Just passed my exam. 0 claims experience. How hard is it to land a first job right now, and what carriers are actually looking to hire and training rookies? Like anything in life, it just kind of depends. One of the things, unfortunately, is your geographic location, and I would look for kind of the local companies to you. You know, if you live in Dallas and you're a new adjuster, chances are there's a lot of opportunities. There's a lot of claims offices in Dallas. You know, some of these big hubs: Dallas, Atlanta, Chicago, New York, Denver, Phoenix. Yeah, get with a carrier or a TPA. John says, I would suggest anyone new to being an adjuster to get a chance with the carrier. I know it takes time to find someone to give someone a chance. Keep in mind you're interviewing them to ask questions on how they train, mentor, and what their philosophy is on developing their people. This will tell you a lot about who you will be working with if you're going to be brought on board to sink or swim or the position to be developed. I agree with that totally. And what I've found is some of the bigger carriers will have more developed training plans, right? And so if you're working with the Travelers, if you're working with a Gallagher Bassett or like a Sedgwick, excuse me, if you're working with some of these bigger carriers who has a developed training plan already, they've kind of got that pathway for you to go. So that's a really great way to kind of to get into it, is looking at some of those larger companies, the ones that you see the commercials with, but also don't forget about the TPAs, you know, the Gallagher Bassetts, the Sedgwicks of the world. They've got some really good training programs, and so that's a good place to start. I would say if you're totally brand new with no experience, if you don't have any construction experience, if you're super green, you know, auto is a good place to start, and sometimes you got to start not even with like an actual claims role. Another place that you can look is some of these claims processor roles. Now with AI, we're starting to see some of these claims processors like CSRs, the FNOL roles kind of go by the wayside, which I think is good from a cost reduction standpoint from the carriers, but not good from a talent develop standpoint. And we're going to only see that gap getting bigger. But right now we're still seeing those positions, but that is also a good place to start. Or even like an adjacent role, like could you become an underwriting assistant and then move into claims? And so those are some other kind of pathways that you can take. If you're having trouble landing that first adjusting job, you know, look at some of the other entry-level jobs in insurance, maybe not specifically in claims. But yeah, it all depends kind of where you're living. But that's what I would look at. You're probably going to have to go into an office. So look at some of the companies that have offices near you. Yeah, look at some of those bigger companies, but also don't sleep on the small ones. You know, I know a lot of small IA firms, a lot of small TPAs that, you know, especially if you live in like Des Moines, Iowa, willing to give a chance because they really need people. Not a whole lot of people in Des Moines. Des Moines is just a huge insurance hub for whatever reason. Yeah, if you're in Des Moines, Iowa, and you need a job, hit me up. Let's go. I'll find you a job. But yeah, it is a little bit geographically contingent, so check that out. Yeah, but also congrats on passing your adjuster license, whoever this is out there. Okay, moving on. This is the claims recruiter office hours. We're hanging out, we got some time left. Every Tuesday, I open up my office. We hang out for an hour or so, answering questions that come in throughout the week. This is the best place to get a hold of me. And my inbox has been blowing up recently, so if I haven't gotten back to you in the last, and I've been sick, so in the last week or so, I will get back to everybody that's hitting me up. Again, this is the best place to reach me or hang out. We'll be here every Tuesday for ever and ever. But I will get back to you, I promise. Just give me a minute. I think this one came in and I haven't responded to this person directly yet, but I'm going to reply to it on the podcast, and I'll reach out to this person too. But I want to break into auto damage appraising. I strongly prefer the 1099 side over working W-2 with zero experience. What is the actual roadmap? So this particular scenario, this person, this is kind of a second career for them. So not looking to necessarily work full time, not working to be tied down to a desk. So the roadmap to getting started. Well, if you're looking to be an independent auto damage appraiser, the absolute best thing that you can do is to look up Chris Stanley on LinkedIn and take the IA Path class. And it's expensive. It's worth every penny. Shout out Chris Stanley. He's got kind of his own niche in this and does extremely well, has really good programming, really good LinkedIn content for it, but also like the work will follow this program. And there's a lot of training programs out there, and I will not say that about every single training program out there. That like, oh, you take this training program, you're going to get work immediately. And it's not like a guarantee, of course. It depends on where you live. It depends on your actual skills, capabilities, your ability to learn the information and to what you do with it. But I will say, from what I've seen, especially on the damage, like auto damage appraising, he has just he's the best out there. So check out Chris Stanley, IA Path. Really good training program specific for this. That's the roadmap. You got no experience, if you don't, you're gonna have to get some training somehow. He's the best. So that's what I would say for that. I don't know if anybody out here is listening, tuning in, has taken the IA Path training class before, heard of it. I've definitely worked with people that have, and I hear over and over again, like, I took this training class, it wasn't cheap, it was worth every penny. So yeah, you pay for what you get. I mean, it's not even that crazy. It's like a couple grand maybe. And for, again, they like, what's really cool about this industry is, especially on the IA side, the independent side, you don't necessarily need a college degree to do this work, but you do need to know how to do the work. And you can learn some of it online, you can learn some of it on YouTube, but taking a training class from a professional who really knows and understands the industry is going to be that best way. On the field side, there's other really good programs. A lot of the IA firms have their own training platforms. MoCat is fantastic. Matt Allen, Adjuster TV, also fantastic. But yeah, for independent auto adjusters, auto appraising, check out Chris Stanley, IA Path. Absolute top tier. How do I go from adjusting role into a manager level role? I'd love to hear from the community on this one too, like what they've seen work. If you've gone from like an individual contributor role to a management level role, how did you do it? I get this question all the time, right? I'm in a role. I want to go into a manager role. How do I do it? So I'll give my 2 cents on it, what I've seen work for people, but I would also be curious just to hear from the community. One of the things that I think is important to just get out on this is like, it's not the same. You could be the absolute best adjuster in the world, and this goes to any industry. You could be the best barista in the world. You could be the best, healthcare professional in the world. It doesn't matter what industry you're in. It's a different skill set to doing the job than it is to like managing others who are doing the job. And you may have an idea of like what it takes or what skills you need or what you need to do, but it is different when you're actually doing the job. So it is a hard jump. It's a difficult jump. But what I will say, the best way to learn that, to like move up and to get that, is to start taking on some of these responsibilities when you're in an individual contributor role. And if that language is new to you, there's three different types of roles that we see in corporate USA, or kind of HR term. So we have individual contributors, and that's like anybody who's in a role that does a job that basically doesn't manage people, right? So a recruiter is an individual contributor role. My job is to recruit people, right? And so I have my task list. I am an individual contributor. My role is individual to me, right? A barista, my job is to make coffees. Healthcare, my role is to be a nurse. And so that's what individual contributor means. The second type is manager level, which is I'm managing people who are individual contributors, right? And so my role is not to necessarily do a task, it's to oversee people who are doing a task. Then the third type of roles is what we call leadership roles, which is managing the people who are managing the individual. So you're more of like thought leadership, you're more driving results for the whole team. you're more making decisions that affect kind of everybody kind of trickling down. So those are the kind of the three types of jobs out there in terms of like what you'll hear from HR: individual contributor, management level, and then leadership level. So it is hard to move from one to the next one up, whether that be manager to leadership or individual contributor to manager. It's difficult, but what I would say is start to be the person that your team goes to. So if someone else in your team has a file that needs to get escalated, a lot of times it goes to the manager. Well, maybe you can talk to your manager and say, hey, you know, I've got some free time, I have some availability, I've been really killing it. If you need extra help and you have files that are escalated that you can't work on, maybe send them to me first and I can help work people through these roles. And so then you're starting to take on some of those roles from your manager and learning some of these duties. So that way you can build your resume to fit some of these roles. And so you can gain experience maybe without the job title. You're gaining experience that you can use to leverage when you're trying to look for that next job. Another thing I would do is just have an honest conversation with your manager. Say, hey, you know, this is my long-term goal. This is where I want to be in 2 to 3 years. Is there anything that I can start doing now to help me develop these skills? And if you have a good manager, they're going to be rooting for you. They're going to be wanting to help you, and they'll be able to kind of give you some. And a lot of times they want to take stuff off their plate too. So it's a good way to kind of move up in your career, is to start taking some of these things on. You know, I think a lot of the mentality that we see these days, like, oh, it's not my job, I don't want to do that, it's not my job description. So if you're the person that goes in there and can solve these problems for your manager, for your supervisor, it can help you get promoted. But yeah, I mean, work kind of on that that trajectory of, like, you know, you're in your claims role, try and move up to kind of like a team lead type role, maybe a supervisor role. It's not always just like a big jump into manager. Sometimes there's a couple steps in between too. You should stand out in various ways: attitude, integrity, trust, communication, team player, participation in projects, possibly taking on supervisor situations, knowledge, skills, express interest to your mentor or manager. 100%. Yeah. If you're willing to start taking some of these things on, especially if other people don't want to take these things on, you're going to stand out. And so you're going to have to start raising your hand for some of these projects. You're going to have to start looking at maybe a process improvement that you can spearhead. So go out and find, if you've got extra time in your job and you want to move up, find a place that you can be effective in changing a process and spearhead that project. Try and take something off your manager's plate. Yeah, start taking on some of the supervisor situations, some of the escalations, some of the difficult calls, things like that. Be that go-to person from your team, but also you got to, like, kind of goes hand in hand. If you're the person taking on all this extra work, you got to let people know that you're taking on this extra work. And so, you know, you don't want to do it all in silence. I know it seems kind of weird to, like, tell people how great you are, but you do want to have some recognition, like, hey, you are taking on these things. And so you got to let your manager know too. So another thing that I think is really good is keep a folder in your email on all the extra projects, all the extra things that you're doing, and start creating a list. And that list is going to become your resume bullet points in the future, but it's easier to kind of start that list than it is to, like, think about, okay, I'm going to start my resume now today. Now I have to come up with this list of all these great things that I've been doing over the last 2 years. Start that list today. Start that list the easiest way is just, yeah, create an email folder about all the special projects, all the extra things that you're doing, all the extracurriculars. Every time someone says, hey, you killed it on this project, keep a folder in your email and add that stuff. So that way in 6 months and a year, when you're going in and doing your resume or when your annual eval is coming up, you can open up that folder and start to see, oh yeah, here's all the things that I've been doing. Good stuff. We're at the hour, but I'll keep going. Heck, I got some time here. Got a couple more questions that came in throughout the week. still joining, if you're still here, thanks so much for tuning in. I appreciate it. This is the Claims Recruiter Office Hours weekly live stream. I just opened up my office every Tuesday. We hang out, we talk about things, claims, recruiting, insurance, fun stuff. Mom, I made it. My mom does watch this sometimes. Shout out Janet. If you're watching, Mom, I made it. Hilarious. We're live on Facebook, we're live on YouTube, we're live on LinkedIn. So let's see, is it possible to go from a teacher to an insurance adjuster? Yes. This is an awesome career progression. I've seen it so many times, especially when I was working at the last TPA I was working at. We love teachers. Teachers are fantastic insurance adjusters. It's an awesome career progression. I think a lot of people teach right now. It's a hard job, and they look to, after a while, they kind of get sick of it. So if that's you and you're a teacher and you're looking for a new career, hit me up. I'd love to chat. I think just like adult education and learning, being able to learn, pick up new skills. Teachers know how to teach people how to do new skills, and so a lot of times they can learn new skills on their own. And it's a really tough job, but also just the customer service, the empathy, those things translate extremely well to insurance adjusting. Yes, teaching is an awesome kind of career progression. Healthcare, another really good career progression. Law enforcement, military, retired military veterans make incredible insurance adjusters. Teachers, yeah. Keep on going here. Rock out just a couple more questions that came in throughout the week before we call it. Have my first interview next week for a claims trainee position. How should I prepare? This particular person reached out to me, brand new, no experience in the industry, claims trainee, interview, fantastic. First off, congrats on getting an interview. That's a huge first step. How should I prepare? One of the big things, especially if you're working with a larger insurance carrier, a larger firm, TPA, whatever it be, there is a very, very good chance they are going to ask you star questions. I know this is like the most boring topic ever, and I understand that, but it's so important. STAR, interview questions, situation, task, action, result. That's what that stands for. So what these questions are, they're like your old school, like tell me about a time when questions. And these are the questions you're going to get when you're working for larger firms, larger carriers. The reasons that they ask you these questions is because these questions are the best way to interview people, and these companies know that. It's been studied so much. Just like in insurance, the analogy I like to make is auto insurance. If you are applying for an auto insurance policy, if you're calling up a broker and saying I need a new auto insurance policy, what are they going to look at? They are going to look at your driving history. They're going to look at your accident history. They're going to look at your ticket history. They're going to look at all these factors to determine basically what type of risk you are for that policy and what type of premium that you're going to have to pay because of all these factors. They're going to look at your age. They're going to look at all these things. And they're going to determine, hey, if you got in 6 accidents in the past, what's the chances of you getting in accident number 7 after I sign you to this policy, right? And so the same logic applies to the interview process. The best indicator of future performance is past performance, right? If you are faced with a certain situation 5 times and you act a certain way, the chances of you acting the same way in the 6th time you face that situation are very, very high. And so that's why these companies ask these tell me about a time when questions, because if you're faced with tell me about a time when you had to deal with an upset customer, right? If these questions are so much better than how would you react to an upset customer, because anyone can make up just like a situation in their head about how they would act or how they should act, but it's a little bit harder on the fly to come up with a situation of how they have acted in the past. And so those are the types of questions that you are absolutely going to get asked in these questions or in these interviews. And so that's how I should prepare. They're not going to ask you complex policy questions. They're not going to ask you about things that you don't know, especially if you're in a trainee position. So think about kind of the soft skills, the transferable skills that you have. You're probably going to get asked about empathy. You're probably going to get asked about how you deal with challenging situations, upset customers, how you learn new skills, things like that. So the questions that I would ask: tell me about a time when you learned a new skill. Tell me about a time when you had to deal with an upset customer. Tell me about a time when you had to deliver bad news to somebody. Those are the types of questions that I would ask, or I would, if I was working with a client who's trying to develop an interview process, those are the types of questions that I would recommend they ask. And so think about those types of things, and then try and apply the STAR method. Again, not super exciting content, but situation, task, action, result. So think about a situation that you faced. For me, I was a cashier at Walmart growing up, right? And so tell me about a time when you had to deal with an upset, angry customer. All the time, right? One of the biggest issues that I had as a Walmart cashier way back in the day, shout out Walmart in Sioux Falls, South Dakota, making $11 an hour back in 2007. I was rich. But the biggest situation that I had was people with the WIC, like food, the government food program. They'd have these coupons basically, and it'd be like, you get one cereal that's a full grain that's 10 ounces, and they'd come up with it. So they'd have the 12-ounce one instead of the 10-ounce one, and they'd give it to me, and then it wouldn't work, right? So my situation would be like someone with the food, with these food vouchers would come to me with the wrong food, and they, maybe didn't speak a whole lot of like fluent English, had difficulties understanding. So how did I react in that situation? Well, here's the situation. My task was to help them get through the line, because I have a line of customers that are also trying to go. The action, what did I do to remedy it? And then what was that result? And so, boom, this person came up with the wrong cereal. What would I do? Well, instead of trying to explain to someone who maybe doesn't speak English very well and doesn't understand, who's really upset, who's trying to go, who's got 3 kids in line with them, what would I do? I would hit the pause button on my cashier. I would literally sprint to the other end of the store. I'd grab the correct cereal, I'd bring it back, and I'd ring it up, because that was quicker than trying to call someone to have them go back and move them out of line, all this stuff. So that's a good example of like a STAR thing, right? So situation, upset customer, had the wrong item. Task ahead was to get them through the line. The action is I just handled it for them. Result, we made it work. We got them out. We got them the correct thing. Everything was good. So that's an example of a STAR question. Have those prepared. Think about the questions that they're going to ask you. Think about scenarios. Write them down. Practice in front of a computer. Those types of things. Another thing, big thing in interviews is eye contact and handshake and kind of all that stuff. A lot of times, and there's a lot of studies on this, people decide very quickly in an interview if they like you or not. Hear this all the time from hiring managers. I know in the first 5 seconds if I'm going to hire the person or not. So try and really get good at that first impression. Practice what you're going to say. There's always that question at the beginning of the interview where it's like, tell me a little bit about yourself. So have your kind of 2-minute elevator pitch. Here's who I am. Here's what I do. Here's how I'm going to be effective in your role. And have fun with it. Do good. Yeah, you're going to kill it. Let me know how it goes. Awesome. One more last question of the day. We're 10 minutes over. Don't even care. Claims recruiter office, hour and 15 minutes this week. Let's go. You're still here hanging out. Appreciate you joining today. We'll be here every Tuesday. Do I need to live in a major insurance hub in order to break into the industry? Not necessarily, but it sure helps. Yeah, I think it really helps. We talked about it earlier today. Is just like remote is kind of getting pushed away a little bit, especially for entry-level roles. And so being willing to travel, being willing to be on a CAT team is going to help. If you don't necessarily live in a major insurance hub, yeah, if you live in, Lake of the Ozarks, Missouri, you're certainly going to have a tougher time finding a position, you know, entry level, than if you live in Atlanta, Chicago, or Dallas. And so it certainly helps. Do you need it? Not necessarily, but it is a tough market for entry level professionals right now, especially if you live in like a remote area. So it certainly does help. That's what I got, y'all. If you made it to the end, appreciate you sticking with it. This is the Claims Recruiter Office Hours live stream. We go live every single week on LinkedIn, Facebook, YouTube. Our goal is to help 100 claims professionals get jobs in the year 2026. My name's Josh. Thanks for joining. Appreciate you being here. We'll see you next week. Peace.